Now, firing that is really controversial that was made today was the Tennessee Titans parting ways with general manager Ran Carthon after only 2 seasons serving in the role with this organization. And what makes this so controversial is that, for one, the owner picked Ran Carthon over Mike Vrabel last year. Mike Vrabel got fired because him and Ran Carthon, they couldn't coexist. You had two alphas, and when you have two guys with that strong of a personality, only one can stay because the other one won't be able to coexist because they gotta have that power. So with the power struggle that Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel had, it forced the Tennessee Titans owner to have to pick one, and she went with Ran Carthon and decided to send Mike Vrabel packing. And Ran Carthon has been a mixed bag as a general manager for the Titans. Like, he's hit on a few draft picks. You know, this rookie class that the Titans have looks pretty promising. You got J.C. Latham. You got Brownlee, the cornerback that you drafted in the middle round. And then in 2023, you know, he had a few draft picks as well that worked out. Peter Skoronski is a pretty serviceable starter. And you also got Tajay Spears, who's a really good RB2. But he's also had a good amount of misses as well. And also, when you spend the most money in free agency and you still are the worst team in the weakest division in the NFL, arguably, you know, you have a right to have some questions asked about you. And although Ran Carthon hired Brian Callahan, you know, it's not like he gave Brian Callahan a lot to work with when you think about what he had at quarterback this year. He had Mason Rudolph and Will Levis. Will Levis was the ultimate wild card coming out of the 2023 NFL draft. That was already a pretty weak quarterback class, with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud being the guys that everybody presumed were going to be solid starters, and they've looked like that up to this point. But outside of them, Anthony Richardson and Will Levis were pretty much in the same tier in terms of the floor was incredibly low, but the upside was incredibly high. And for Will Levis, getting him in the second round looked like a steal, but he was one of those guys that needed to sit for a year or two. He needed a lot of development because his mechanics were not that good, and he was just too reckless with the football. And the same mistakes that Will Levis made at Kentucky, he continues to make at the NFL level. And then you only have Mason Rudolph as your only backup option. So it's like Brian Callahan pretty much was coaching with his hands tied behind his back due to how incompetent the quarterbacks he was given were from Ran Carthon. And Ran Carthon, I like him. You know, he's a well-spoken guy. He really cares about the players. The players like him because all the reactions from Titans players, they are really upset with this move. And I would be upset too if I was them because, you know, when you have a guy that takes a shot on you and he helps you fulfill your lifelong dream, of course you're going to support him. And even I was a little shocked to see this move happen because you knew that this wasn't going to be an overnight rebuild. And the Titans owner, I'm not saying that women don't know anything about football because there are some women that know football just as much as me and you do. But it doesn't seem like she has a good grasp on understanding what it takes for an organization or a franchise to rebuild successfully. You can't expect to have a successful rebuild if you're canning your general manager before his third season. You know, you have the first overall pick. And the Titans this year, if they had at least average quarterback play, they probably end up being a 7, maybe 9-win team. And maybe they could have competed for the AFC South title because the Texans weren't really that good. The Jags were trash. And same thing with the Colts. So if you had a guy like a Baker Mayfield or even a Jameis Winston, you would have been a way better team than what you were this season because your defense was great. You know, it just was that Will Levis, when he's becoming Santa's helper nearly every single week, it's hard to win games when you just have a quarterback that just continues to make it hard to win. So for Brian Callahan, we don't really know how good of a coach he is until he gets his quarterback. And firing Ran Carthon doesn't make things any better for him, because now you're going to have a new GM that's going to have Brian Callahan on a short leash. Because if the Titans don't win a lot of games this upcoming season in 2025, Brian Callahan could get canned only after his second season as the head coach for this organization. So it's like the Titans just right now, they're not going down a really good path. It looks like with them canning their GM, and most likely Brian Callahan probably going to get canned because the GM that they're going to bring in, he didn't hire Brian Callahan. So when you got a GM that has a head coach that he didn't hire, he's going to be on a shorter leash. And you got the #1 overall pick. I would have trusted Ran Carthon more with that due to him hiring Brian Callahan, because they got a vision of what they want this team to be. And now with you bringing in a general manager, he may have a different vision from how he feels this team should be compared to Brian Callahan, which leads to dysfunction. And now the Titans, they've gone from one of the more well-ran franchises in the NFL to now one of the worst-ran franchises in the NFL within the span of 3 years. You might as well have just kept Mike Vrabel and fired Ran Carthon after last year if this was what you were going to do. You feel me? So I don't really like this decision by Tennessee to fire Ran Carthon. I felt like with some of the draft picks that he hit on and some of the free agency moves that he made, the Titans were heading down the right direction, because you had the #1 overall pick. You get Shedeur or Cam Ward, and they end up panning out. Then, boom, you instantly are a playoff team in a division that is arguably the weakest in the NFL. So I really don't understand this decision to get rid of Ran Carthon, but